Hello and welcome to Screen Time. I have to start off by apologizing for my voice. Today I'm coming out of a cold, so please be patient with me. Today I'll be reviewing Liju Krishnan's directed and written new directorial debut, Padavettu, starring Nivin Pauly. Now, Padavettu is about two things. It is about a battle, for sure. The Padavettu is what at the core of the film. We see the protagonist battle with his own self, between his trauma and wanting to be who he wants to be. And we also see the battle of a political drama. Within a village, we see the political battle between the farmers and the politicians and the capitalists, etc. So these two battles kind of form the two parallels that we see throughout the film. The villagers are facing multiple issues. Now, number one, there is this political party at large, multiple political parties at large, but one party who's really out to monetize and capitalize on the farmers' vulnerability. And let's call him a capitalist pig. Simultaneously, there is a wild boar afloat. He is running wild, he's wreaking havoc on people's farms, on banana farms and paddy fields, etc. So he is a wild boar. And there is this parallel drawn between a capitalist pig and a wild boar. And they kind of become the two villains that we see throughout the film. Apart from this, there's also our protagonist who's going through an extremely emotional internal dilemma, dealing with his trauma from an accident. He was a sportsman, a celebrated sportsman, who lost his career in a bike accident, and then we see him kind of turn into this very cold, arrogant, self-loathing, but also has a violent streak kind of man. There's a lot to confront for him within himself and with the village around him. The film is set in northern Kerala and Kannur, and as we know, Kannur is a heavy political belt. There's a lot going on in terms of the texture of Kannur's political narratives, and they've captured that quite well. In the same way, Kannur is heavily culturally sound and so bright and beautiful and packed. They've captured it all. The visual experience of this movie was quite beautiful. Cameraman Deepak the Menon has captured this vibrancy in Kannur, within the people, within the landscapes, and the director has paid close attention, who I believe he is also from Kannur. He has paid a lot of attention in capturing the art forms, the folk art forms, the sort of surreal scenes that you see, which I don't want to spoil too much. There are a lot of these surreal sequences of within the farm I don't know how to explain. It's the protagonist reenacting his chase with the wild boar. So we see it in a very dramatic, almost theatrical sort of setting. Now these things really add to the texture of the film. Suddenly we're seeing like a very up-close shot of a rooster, or we're seeing an up-close shot of a honeybee cooder. And all of these different natural elements kind of come into the film and set the village for us. It paints this village that the story is kind of set in. And that is truly what it's about. The film is about this village, and it's about Malur, that's where it's set, Malur in Kannur, and it really uses the backdrop to its advantage. Along with the natural visuals kind of seeping in, there is also my favorite part of the movie, which was the sound design done by Govind Vasantha. It was so beautiful. It really engrosses you to kind of stay and pay attention to everything that's happening. There's a lot going on in the film, but then the sound really keeps you engaged throughout. And the sound also is coming from multiple natural sources. You can see at some points there's this humming of a bee, there's this like murmur, there are these eerie sort of tones that come in, which have that texture of the village. It's this village's conscience that you can kind of hear, while there's and of course, there's also these lengthy silences where it really keeps you, kind of like waiting. And then you kind of have this eruption of multiple tremors of layered sounds, which really is beautiful because the film kind of wants you to experience that. It wants you to go through our protagonist's inner battle, so you can hear this kind of buzzing in the back of his brain, and as well as the tremors of the village and of the politicians and of the farmers and their cry and the nature's cry. And you hear it all. You hear it all in the sound. The sound is truly the strongest element in this film, I thought. Another strong element really packaging this film so beautifully are the acting performances. Performance by Nivin Pauly is something to be spoken about because I think with his newfound physique and this newfound persona, he really, I don't know, reminded me of like a 2008 Mohanlal Mammootty type of presence, right? You really like pay attention to him when he comes on screen, and that's quite wonderful. The finest acting performance is brought to us by Shammi Tilakan, and he really shines in this movie. You want to hate him, but he shines, all right. He does this sort of magnanimous performance of a very controlling, cunning, evil capitalist pig, but he does it with the most ease, honestly. Like he seems to just be performing with the kind of effortlessness that, of course, reminds us of his late father, Mr. Tilakan, who was a brilliant actor. And Shammi Tilakan really seems to be coming into his own kind of language of portraying evil, and it's beautiful how subtle it is. It's beautiful how much it makes you kind of irk, because you look at the farmers on one side and you see them in their most believable sense. They're really capturing that essence of a struggling agrarian and the silent crisis that's going on in Kerala right now. And then you have this representation of all the politicians, all the evil that is come upon them, embodied in Shammi Tilakan. It's brilliant. He plays the ultimate political villain in this film. Another character that really stood out for me was a character played by Ramya Suresh called Pushpa. She plays the character of Nivin Pauly, our protagonist's auntie, who raises him. And she, of course, I feel like she deserved more screen time, more space. I really want to know what happened to her. But she does what she's given with a lot of grace. She really plays that convincing woman who's trying very hard to make her life work, but is, struggling to meet the world halfway for it. She struggles a lot to deal with the panchayat, her nephew who's a menace, and her leaking home, cooking, cleaning, all of these things. She's kind of portrayed it really well as, I don't know, she reminded me of one of the women I know, somebody I know who's struggling very hard to make her life work. So I really appreciated her acting performance as well. Apart from all of this, at the crux of it, I think Padavettu is a political drama, and it does kind of capture really well that the violent, the gruesome reality of politics, especially within Kannur. My favorite scene in the film is this one particular shot where the aftermath of a political riot is shown to us. It's early morning, and then we see this, it's kind of pulling back from a shot of broken grocery store items and just this dirt and waste, and there's this auto that's been toppled over and set on fire, and there's a lot going on. It's a town, middle of the central town, with village town, where there is this political riot that has taken place, and then we see the aftermath of it. That shot was quite powerful, because that shot, to me, looked like human waste. It looked like the waste of political interaction that is not leading to the benefit of the people or for the benefit of politics. It is this aggression, it is male aggression, it is a result of that male aggression. So that one shot was quite powerful. And the fact that we have the backdrop of the village under it that has been painted by this political blood, political violence. So that shot was definitely my favorite. I don't know, I really enjoyed the film as a viewer, because I think everything from the camera to the sound to the music and the acting performances kind of lining up makes for a naturally exciting movie experience. Another shot that I believe, I'm sure they thought of it, but I think it really affected me a lot more watching, was this one shot where we have Shammi Tilakan's character, Kuyali, Minister Kuyali, coming in and discussing political strategy in a banana totem, where there's a man laying dead. He has been stabbed to death by a wild boar, and he's laying in the middle of the field. And we have the villain and the heroes and the town people kind of discussing what to do next, and then it ends up being a conversation on political strategy. They are deciding to declare him as a Rakta Sakshi and kind of move on with that narrative. This man's dead body is laying there right in front of them as they're having this conversation. In the background of this conversation, we see the banana totem. And in the totem, there are multiple, banana gatherings that are ripe and left for ripening, and they have been covered with this sort of reddish plastic covering. And I don't know, something about this visual, this shot, to me, they started looking like meat hanging from skewers. And it kind of became very surreal. I was watching and they're having this conversation, and it looked like a display of bodies of meat, because of the color and of the banana's shape. And that shot is very surreal. I don't know if that was done purposefully. If it was, then brilliant. If not, then, thanks. There's more for us to read into it. Because that's truly what it is, no? It's like a showroom of people, of lives, of bodies. And then people kind of coming in, people like our villain here, coming and choosing what to do and how to use them as he wants to. So this one shot where they're discussing political strategy over a dead body in a background with these bodies of meat hung was quite surreal and kind of captured, again, the essence of the film for me. At the heart of it, Padavettu is a compelling effort. It is a very poignant story about Kannur's political and agrarian crisis. And I think because our director is also from there, this is definitely a story that's close to his heart. The sound, the actors, the camera, and all of it kind of comes together to tell that story as beautifully as it possibly can. But even though I enjoyed this as a movie experience, it made me think about a couple of things. Number one, it made me think about male aggression and why we keep constantly making films that give us a gray area about male aggression. Nivin Pauly, dealing with his trauma, dealing with his condition of his life, it manifests in a lot of aggression. There's multiple large sequences of fighting scenes. There's a lot of, war cry, a lot of powerful monologue, a lot of slow motion, kind of beating sequences. I get it. I get that maybe they were going for a mass hero movie also, but it really confuses you because it makes you wonder, does the good guy always have to be this extremely aggressive person who, by the way, treats his aunt horribly, horribly? There are multiple sequences where he is yelling at her, abusing her. At one point, he pushes her into a muddy kind of landscape where there's a fight sequence happening. He pushes her into the dirt, and you wonder, and to my shock, the people in the theater were laughing. Immediately, as she was pushed into the dirt, people started laughing. And I was afraid, I was scared that in this attempt of making a film about politics, perhaps they have given us a little bit of extra while giving us an appreciation of male aggression. And that becomes extremely problematic. It was very strange to me as a person in a movie theater, not as somebody who wants to talk about it later, but as an audience watching this film. The second this man is having a violent outrage, he's beating people up to death, and he pushes his auntie into the muddy water, the entire theater begins to laugh. What does that mean? What are they trying to tell us? What does the audience want? As people, why do we go watch movies? That's a question that really remained with me when I came back after the movie, because political drama aside, it is a story of men. And maybe, yes, maybe our political condition is still very much rooted in the masculine, but perhaps movies can be told in a way where it's not lauding the violence, it's not lauding the aggression, it is not appreciating extremely problematic things or highlighting it. There's a sequence in the film where, again, Pushpa, our protagonist's auntie, is at the butt of a very sexist scene. There is a veterinary doctor coming in, completely unnecessarily, completely unrelated to our plot. He comes in for about 4 to 5 minutes on screen just to make 3 or 4 extremely sexist jokes remarked towards the woman in the scene and the female cow in the scene. It's very unnecessary. Now, if we take this sexist scene and this sort of violence that Nivin Pauly's character pursues against his aunt, if you take these two things in isolation, in a Malayalam movie, it is not completely unnatural because you see such a large history of like how women are treated poorly on screen in our movies. But when you look at these two scenes, and you also take into context the fact that our director is a Me Too accused, rape accused person, I begin to get a little worried. I love the film, and I want to try as much to separate the art from the artist in certain cases. But when you're directly referring to women and referring to these questionable scenes in the film, then you start wondering what actually is going on in these people's heads when they're putting these scenes together. To conclude, I really enjoyed Padavettu as a cinematic experience. I had a wonderful time at the movies. That soundtrack will remain with me forever. And I loved it as this mass hero movie with Nivin Pauly doing such a wonderful job with a political commentary, a very strong political commentary at the heart of it. Although I do wish maybe they decided which parallel to go with more, whether they wanted to focus on the protagonist's internal battle or if they wanted to focus on the commentary of the political battle. This tension between the two really had me a little puzzled at the end of the movie, as well as let's think about why we watch movies and let's think about why we make movies. And as an audience, reflect on why we laugh at women getting punched down at fight sequences. And this is something that will remain with me after this film. There's a lot of reflection to be done as an audience on what we're going to demand from our filmmakers. Yeah, that's about it. And I hope we can keep this conversation going. And I will be back next week with another film. Thank you.